systems that are out there now before this even kicks into place, which means that Congress really isn't taking this seriously. If they were taking this seriously, you would have much more well-funded programs in place to help out small businesses, to help out local government agencies, to help out your school systems, to help out your healthcare. We're seeing numerous attacks, almost a pattern of attacks at this point in time, attacking infrastructure and attacking weak federal government and state and local government institutions. And that's really where we need to be hardening things. I work for a contractor who we do business with the government, or at least subcontract work out from primes. And one of the disturbing things that we deal with on a regular basis is the need to know. For instance, we make a small component of one of the weapon systems that the federal government, the Army uses, okay? And for us to produce that, we only need to know where we're interfacing, where it has to fit in, that type of stuff. If a prime contractor sends us a document or a drawing, a schematic that has the entire weapon system on it because we're putting one small piece into it, that's just irresponsible. And that's where the federal government needs to be locking down. But we're seeing things like Kaspersky's being banned. All right, well, Kaspersky's been around for ages. Former company I worked at, that was their go-to for antivirus. We never had any issues with it. There's never been any proof that there is Russian interference with Kaspersky itself. There's just a lack of evidence. Maybe it's happening, maybe it's not. Companies themselves should be smart enough to make the decision on whether or not they're going to use a piece of software that's obviously from a hostile country. Just like citizens need to be able to make the choice of whether or not they're going to use a service like TikTok and put their information out there. They want to get rid of TikTok because TikTok is, the Chinese people are collecting your data. Well, every other social network out there is. Every service out there in which you don't pay for it and it's free, you're the business model. You're the product at that point. Collecting your information, using it and selling it is their business model. And you look at, things like Facebook, most social media is a cesspool at this point in time, unfortunately. But Facebook has been caught red-handed numerous times, breaking the law, violating ordinances, and even interfering with elections, not just in our country, but in multiple countries. And yet somehow there's been no push to ban Facebook, who's proven infinitely more detrimental to the American people than TikTok ever has. So what if China has information about people doing stupid dances on TikTok? Who cares? What can they do with it? But when you have a company like Facebook, back, when they had their deal with Cambridge Analytica, and they were literally selling, not giving, because they don't give anything away. They were selling data to Cambridge Analytica, who were then taking that data and then using it to influence elections, in many cases illegally. That's far more dangerous than anything TikTok has ever done. So I think the federal government really needs to get a clue as to where the threats are, how to protect itself, because they're not even protecting themselves at this point, before they start imposing ridiculously expensive cybersecurity measures on small and medium-sized businesses. Today's news kind of highlights the fact that we've got a lot of cybersecurity issues out there, and the federal government just is not taking it seriously, or they just simply lack the competence to be the ones that are defining these things. There's really no other explanation for it. Cybersecurity is a standard, or rather a series of standards or frameworks. It's difficult, but it's nothing new. And when the federal government decides that they're going to make up their own rules and not abide by them, it's very difficult to force other people to take up that mantle themselves. So anyway, that's the news for this week. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to do part 2 of our deep dive into podcasting. And we're going to talk about the softer side of podcasting. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. We are talking the softer side of podcasting. So last week in our first episode, we took a look at some of the hardware that we're using here, our mixers, our switches, video switchers, or microphones and so forth. But none of that stuff would really do you any good without having the decent software that you need to keep everything up and running. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So probably the biggest one that we use here, and it's because I don't have a massive budget, obviously, and that is our broadcasting and recording software. So we do everything right now on Open Broadcast, OBS, Open Broadcast software. This is from OBS Project. It's a powerful, free, and open source tool widely used for video recording and live streaming. Some of the key features include high quality recording and streaming. It supports HD video recording, live streaming to platforms like YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and so forth. You can handle multiple sources. OBS allows users to combine multiple sources, such as screen captures, webcam feeds, audio inputs, media files, such as images and videos, stick everything into a single stream, and you can do multiple scenes per scene collection. Your scene composition, users can create multiple scenes that combine different sources, layouts, and overlays, which can be switched on during streaming or recording. You can do customizable transitions. OBS provides various transitions like fades and slides and cuts, switching between scenes and adding a professional look to live streams. You also have studio mode. I don't normally run in studio mode unless we're live. We're recording at the moment, so we're not live. But studio mode allows you to preview your scenes and sources before transitioning to them live in a dual screen format, which is really convenient. There's an advanced audio mixer in here, which is helpful when you're dealing with multiple sources. There's cross-platform compatibility. OBS will work on Windows. It'll work on Mac. It'll work on Linux. And it also has plugin support. So it'll support a wide range of third-party plugins for additional functionality, virtual green screens, video effects, plus integration with streaming services. You can do real-time video and audio editing on the fly, which is nice. I don't do a lot of that. Unfortunately, being a one-man show, it's difficult to do that stuff on the fly. So any effects that we usually have to do, I either have them queued up or they are entered in post. It'll do GPU-based encoding, which is really nice. So OBS leverages hardware encoding for NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel graphics processors. And this gives you a smoother, faster performance while streaming or recording. You can record and stream at the same time, which is really nice. When we go live, which we don't do so much anymore, we're able to record the stream and broadcast live at the same time. It helps to have a little bit of horsepower I've got the system here. It's an older i9 that I have this system running on Windows 11. So the horsepower and memory certainly helps. But OBS is really a game changer. It was a lifesaver for me. I started playing around with it years ago during gaming and streaming to Twitch. I found that it's a great way to do screen captures if you're trying to grab a video or something like that, or you want to broadcast something out, you want to grab tutorials, you want to make tutorials real quick. It's great for that. So outside of that and the hardware, everything else that we do is kind of sort of bells and whistles and back end type stuff. Now, I couldn't do any of this stuff without a piece of software that I happened to stumble upon when I was putting things together early on. And that is a program called Companion by a company named Bitfocus. So Companion itself is an application that kind of allows you to tie everything together. So I use a Stream Deck XL, which looks sort of like that. And this is a fully programmable control interface. All the buttons are LCD screens. Sorry, they're LCD screens. So each button can be customized to do something different. You can have a different graphic, a different animation on there. You can nest functions and so forth. But for the podcast, I don't use it in its native format like you see there. There are a boatload of applications that it supports natively. And natively, like things like the Adobe Suite, right? So you can key map out like macro keys. You can do scripted keys. You can do nested keys. You can do timings. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. What I use it for is this software, this companion software itself interfaces with the Stream Deck. It is able to talk to my A10 Mini video switcher, and it also allows me to key into OBS. It has hook-ins to OBS, which is really nice. So what I'm able to do is for each show that we do, I build out a different scene collection in OBS. And then on the Stream Deck itself in Companion, I will build out the interface, the button interface there. Now with these buttons, for instance, I switch over to camera 4 here I'm on now, and you see my lower third has disappeared. So the Companion software allows me to do sequencing. So when I switch to camera 4 on my Stream Deck, the Companion application intercepts that and runs its sequence. So it switches to the right camera on the A10 Mini. It tells OBS to switch to the correct scene. It also tells OBS to pop up my lower third immediately. So if I push camera 4 again, I get my lower third back up. So it automatically pops up my lower third. It'll mute mics. You know, if I go to commercial or if I go to my outro or something, it'll automatically mute the mic so it doesn't come through in OBS. But for my lower thirds here, I don't want to keep them up the whole time. So I have a timer on there. I think it's set to 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, it turns that element of the scene off. So now my lower thirds can go away. You get the whole screen at this point in time. And if I switch camera angles back to camera 1 over here, I get a different lower third because it's a different scene element. But that lower third itself will expire over a period of time and go away. And it allows you to make a very dynamic type of presentation, which is really nice. If I didn't have Companion, I'd have to manually go in here and switch scenes on one control panel, then go and switch camera angles on the A10 Mini. Then I'd have to manually toggle off the elements that I don't want on. I'd have to manually mute. So Companion really is the meat and potatoes of everything that we do here. It's a free, small program that seems insignificant for the most part, but the power that it gives me from a production standpoint is incredibly useful. It offers you a central control interface. It allows users to control multiple devices and software from a single interface. It can manage everything from the video switchers to media servers, making it ideal for live production environments. It's got Stream Deck integration. Now, Stream Deck, to their credit, recognized how significant the software was, and they natively support it now, but I don't use their native support for it. The way the companion works, the way I'm using it, is it overrides the Stream Deck interface. And you build everything out through a web interface, which is really nice. It offers wide device and software support, professional broadcasting equipment, software such as Blackmagic ATEM switchers, which I use, vMix, OBS Studio we talked about, QLab. It'll work with Roland mixers and tons. The support for this is incredible. You can customize your button layout. You can copy them. You can duplicate them. You can paste them. You can move them around. You can make different screens for them. You can have multi-action macros, which is what I use for my lower thirds. It works on Mac OS. It works on Windows. It works on Linux, just like OBS does. Web-based control interface makes it easy to configure everything. It'll also show you, which is nice from a diagnostic standpoint, if you open up the web interface for it, it will show you if it's connected to the various components that you told it to connect to. For instance, the only thing that I'm connecting to at this point right now is I connect to my ATEM and I connect to OBS. But when you fire up the software itself will actually show you if those connections are active. And if it's not, you can troubleshoot it. One of the things that I found is I'm the type of person who uses static IPs a lot, and it connects via IP to everything that it talks to. And the problems I ran into is at one point in time, my ATEM switcher didn't have a static IP, and it couldn't connect to it. I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized it had gotten another DHCP address. So I had to go in and set a reservation for the IP address so it didn't change. That's really the only problem that I've ever had. There was a problem where a new version came out that didn't support the current version of OBS, and I had to roll back, but never really had any problems with the software. The Stream Deck itself, Stream Deck XL is the one that I use here on my main gaming computer that I do my editing on. I have two stacked standard Stream Decks that I use that can operate independent of each other, which is nice. The interface itself is incredibly intuitive, and I love these things. I've been using them for years. They originally were produced by Elgato. Elgato was bought out by Corsair, so they're serviced by Corsair now. The XL itself has 32 customizable keys that you can use for one-touch controls, for, like I said, for sequencing the things that you can put together. There's an unlimited number of profiles. They offer custom icons. I don't use them. I use all text icons for the podcast, but for my editing machine that I use downstairs, there is profiles that I have set up that are custom icons for Premiere, Audition, After Effects. I even have a profile set up for Audacity because occasionally I'll work on that instead of Audition. But you can get custom icons for it. You can use your own icons. You can use animated icons. And they've got applications that you can add that will run on here. I happen to have one of my buttons set up here that just shows my CPU usage, and it gives me a percentage usage, and it's dynamically updated. The XLs come with magnetic adjustable stands, tactile feedback, etc., etc. It's a great piece of technology. It makes my life so much easier. I never even have to touch the mixer. I never have to touch the video switcher. I do have a touch screen. I don't even touch the touch screen at this point in time because everything's literally bound to those 32 keys on the Stream Deck. So that's basically what we use software-wise for the live podcast. And there's a couple of miscellaneous ones that we use. Like, for instance, our video communications that we use presently is Zoom. I have a Zoom subscription. I find the call quality on Zoom is superior to anything else that's out there. We moved over from using, oh boy, what was it? Microsoft's solution, not Teams, Skype. We were using Skype for the longest time. Zoom is great because the recording functions in Zoom, if you've got a Zoom subscription, the recording functions are really convenient because they've got an AI now that you can use that will summarize your recordings for you. You can record the Zoom calls either to the cloud or local, which is nice, or both, which is very nice. It records in high quality. When it records it to the cloud, it will actually provide you multiple resolutions of the video call itself so you can go in and use whichever one works best for you. But it will record it for everybody, multiple channels, which is really nice. So it makes it very convenient if you're doing multiple people on a Zoom call and you want to go back after that and edit the audio so you can have individual tracks for each of them. The other thing that we use religiously, we use Google Docs for our collaboration efforts. We put all of our show notes out there. Our host will share them. We'll make them available to guests through the internet. And it's just easier to collaborate that way. We recently, as you probably heard in the credits, introduced a call-in line. We're using Google Voice for that. Now, we're not answering it, although I can, but I can't do it during the show. I have the technical capability. What I lack is the mental coordination to handle incoming calls by myself. But if you leave a voicemail message on the line, we can get you onto the show at a later date. The other one that we do use quite regularly is a file synchronization software. So there's numerous PCs, numerous computers, I'll say, that are in use here. So I've got an i9 Windows 11 here that I do the recording on. If we're broadcasting live, I'll broadcast from this as well. Then I have a Mac Studio, an M1 Mac Studio over here as well. All of our rebroadcasts out to Twitch and YouTube go through that using OBS as well. Then I've got a system downstairs that I do my video editing on because I have multiple monitors and I have all the setup down there. So as a result, I try, especially when I'm doing the shows, recording and going live with the shows, I try to store everything locally. The way OBS records it in a format that if you have network latency and you're trying to save to a network share, it can cause problems, especially if the software crashes, you'll lose pretty much everything you've recorded. So I record everything locally and I pull everything locally. But what I do is I synchronize everything down to one of my file servers. So after this is done, I'll synchronize the files from this podcast down to my file server using a piece of software called Free File Sync. Now, this software actually came about from work, ironically enough. When we had to do some file synchronization at work for a couple of NAS boxes that we had there, we evaluated a number of different ones. We didn't go with this one for work, but I found this one while I was doing it. And I really like what you could do. Now, I do donate to the software author, and it gets you a little bit more functionality. But the software file synchronization is fantastic. You can schedule automated jobs. You can do multiple directories. You can do network drives. You can do remote backups. It's an incredibly versatile piece of software that makes my job so much easier. I had gone through several things. We had tried Microsoft Sync Toy. We had tried various backup softwares. We did some Acronis, tried to sync it down to it. It was a problem that I couldn't solve very easily. And when I stumbled across Free File Sync and started playing around with it and got it set up, This does everything that I need at this point in time. So I swear by this software. So the other thing that's probably worthwhile talking about is our post-production processes. And I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds about how we edit and stuff like that. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there that will teach you how to do that. And Lord knows I sat through a lot of them to learn what I know now. But the tools that we use, we're I don't want to say we're an Adobe shop. That kind of makes me seem corporate. We're not corporate. But we use Adobe Creative Cloud extensively here. So all my video editing is done through Premiere Pro. All my audio editing, 95% of my audio editing is done through Audition. All of our effects that we do, if I've not farmed the effects out like I've done for the intros and so forth, if there's stuff that I do, like I do the video, the sound bar effect on our no credits rolled videos, stuff like that, any specialty stuff like that, I do through Adobe After Effects. And then the images for our lower thirds and our logos and backdrops and anything else, that's obviously all done in Photoshop. And then the last one that I have, the last tool I want to talk about here, because we're going to have to do a third part of this because I started going down the route of putting the notes together for the show and realized that hardware and software is one thing, services are another. So we're going to do another one. It'll be a shorter one, but part 3 of this, we'll talk about the online services that we use to publish all of our stuff. But the last piece of software that I did want to talk about is one that I stumbled upon. It's not in use. It's not in production anymore, but it's one that made video editing very early on. Audio editing very early on, incredibly simple. And it's a program called the Levelator. Now, the Levelator is a software that runs on Windows and Mac. It adjusts the audio levels within the podcast or any other audio files from one speaker to the next. And I think I have a page for it here. Let me see. No, that one there. This isn't the official page itself. This just happens to be a place where you can still get the download. You'll notice that it's pretty old. I mean, the last version of this was 2.1.1 from 2010. Now, it's not a compressor. It's not a normalizer. It's not a limiter. But it does all 3 of these. There aren't any bells and whistles. There aren't any switches or sliders. What it does is more than all 3 of those combined, and the UI is, they say it's dirt simple, and it really is. You basically take the file that you want, either a WAV file or an AIFF file, and you just drag and drop it onto the small program interface, and it just goes to town. And when it's done, you get a new output file. And if you listen to those 2 files side by side, I've yet to have a situation where it made it worse. There have been 1 or 2 instances after I've gone in and done my editing that I've run it through and I couldn't really hear much of a difference. But if you take a raw file, you drop it in here, you're going to hear the difference. And it's a huge difference. It caters to voice rather than music or other sounds. So if you've got multiple distinct voices that are talking on a podcast, on a file, that's the ideal scenario for it. You want to drop that in there and it'll, even if it's all on one track, in fact, it has to be all on one track. It doesn't handle multi-track waves. But if you drop the raw file in there, all single track, it'll clear it up and make it sound fantastic. So that's really it from a software standpoint. We're not overly sophisticated. We are not high budget here. My Adobe subscription's probably the most expensive thing here. Maybe the annual Zoom subscription's probably kind of pricey too. But other than that, there's a lot of technology at play here. There's a lot of money that was thrown at problems, challenges, I want to say. There was a lot of money that was wasted in trial and error. I think I threw away almost as much equipment as I've retained. But in the long run, I'm very satisfied with the product itself. So on the part 3 of this deep dive, we're going to talk about the services that we use to publish our RSS feeds, our websites, stuff like that, our restreams. And we'll wrap this up in a third segment at a later date, probably next week on next week's show. But that's all we had for this week. Before we do go, I want to once again invite folks to subscribe to the podcast. This is Insights into Technology, but you can find us listed under Insights into Things, along with all of our other podcasts. You can find video and audio podcasts listed under there. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Buzzsprout, Podbean, pretty much any place you can get a podcast. We would also love to hear your feedback. This is show 2. I'd love to hear feedback on how I'm doing, good or bad. I'll take it either way. What would you like us to talk about? What would you like us not to talk about? You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can reach us on Twitter or X at insights_things. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. You can call into us. Call in, leave a voicemail. Tell us your feedback. If you'd like us to put you on a show, just let us know which show you'd like to appear on. If it is appropriate for that show, we'll certainly get you on there as soon as we can. You can call into 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. Or you can reach us at our website at www.insightsintothings.com. And that's it. Another one in the books.